So what I want to talk about today is one of the F# libraries for doing web, and it has this very cool logo with like hair, bow tie, and mustache and everything. So you can see it's very modern and hip library. But I didn't pick it because of the logo. I picked it because I actually think it's technically in many ways very elegant. And the reason why I kind of liked it is that whenever I try to do web programming, very often you have to sort of start some new project, and then it starts with like controller and model and lots of other things and _code folders where you have to put some stuff. Or these days it might even come with like special build of the C# compiler and a dedicated .NET framework build. And that sounds like a very complicated way of doing web programming, because if you look at web, it's really just all you have to do when you're doing web servers is write a function that takes a request and produces a response, which sounds really simple, especially if you're coming from the functional world where all we do is write functions. So this should be really easy, and I think with many of the frameworks, and you can go to my website, there's like long rant against frameworks. So you should write libraries rather than frameworks, and this is following the idea in a really nice way. It's not just that there's a function, so it's a little bit more complicated than that, because obviously we also need to write code asynchronously. If you're writing a server and you're processing a request, and in the middle of the processing you need to wait for something, like read data from somewhere or communicate with some other parts of the system, then you need async around it. Otherwise, you would block your server and you would be able to handle like 10 requests in parallel, and async deals with that. So with async, it looks like we have pretty much everything sort of directly in the F# language. Like we have functions and we have async, and there's actually one more thing that's useful when doing web programming, because usually you have some additional things around on the server that are sort of alive and maybe keep some state. And with F# you can use agents, or as the library calls them, mailbox processors, to keep some sort of information that's shared across multiple requests. So the idea here is, one of the demos that I'll try to write today is something like WhatsApp, and then we're going to deploy it and sell it for 800 billion. There we'll have some collection of chats or chat rooms, and every chat room will handle some sort of messages where you can tell the chat room, here's something new that you should remember, or we can tell the chat room now, tell us all the messages in there. So that's the third thing that we'll use, some agents to keep a little bit of state when we're handling multiple requests that actually need to sort of aren't pure functions, but need to share some state or do something more. So I think that's pretty much. No, I have a few more slides. I'll maybe show you some more slides later, but I want to do a quick demo, starting with something really simple. And I actually thought, and we'll see how this goes, I installed the Atom editor with F# support, and I installed it. It has a few nice things that I'll need. So if you do Ctrl-Shift-P, it shows you like all the commands you have available. On Mac, it's just the Mac button and P. That's much easier. And you can install various plugins. One plugin that I actually installed is for Bucket. So how many people know about Bucket? A few, yes. Bucket is basically a dependency manager, which is, the idea is to make it easier, and it replaces the NuGet packages config file with a file that looks like this. And the other thing it does is that it keeps all the versions in one place. So with NuGet, you always have, like in every project, you have the version number in your reference path. Packet gets rid of that. So all your references are just to like packages/package name. And the only place where it has the versions is in this log file. And in here, when I look at my file, it actually tells me my packages aren't installed. So the nice thing here is that I can just say packet restore, and this goes to NuGet, downloads all the packages, and I want it to be in this file. So now it works, and if I do open fsharp.data, then here's my library. So this is just like one thing where it gives you nice tools for working with Packet. You can also do like outdate it to ask which of my packages need an update, and it says yes, I should update these too. So it's just a nice integration for Packet. And then the other thing I'm going to use here is a little build script written using fake. And I'm not going to go deep into it, but when you look at the samples, I'll give you a link later on. There's like a build script which doesn't do too much, but the interesting thing it does is that if I open my source code, so I'm in the news folder, there's a build command, and I can just say build, and this triggers the build, which will do a few things. It will load this script file that I'll be working on, and it also opens a web browser. So there we go, here's my hello world. Now the nice thing that the build is doing in the background is that it's also checking for updates. So if I change it here, save the file, and refresh, then it reloads the F# script. So it gives you this nice, quick, interactive mode. And here I'm not really using the normal F# interactive. I've replaced it with a big background reloader, and then I can just edit my website here. So that's how it sort of works. And
sorry, how is app connected to?
That's a good question.
Where's the magic?
Yeah, where's the magic? How is app connected to the rest of the runner? So I'll maybe show that later. But basically, in the build file, it uses the F# compiler service, and it loads this script, and it gets the app value from it. So app is a special name. If I said app12 and reloaded it, then it would just load the old one again. So it runs this script and loads value called app. If I say something here with like lots of banks and save it, then it doesn't actually update because there's no app value.
If you put in the word Apple, will it still return with app?
No.
If I put Apple,
Yes.
no, that wouldn't work. We don't like Apple. They didn't give me a free laptop that I could use. But it would actually, I did the talk on Apple before. It's just carrying 2 laptops across the ocean was too heavy. So it works nicely on the Mac, but you still have to call it app. So the first thing I want to do is to just start with something really simple, easy demo. How many people have played with type providers before? Many people. How many people have played with some of the type providers from the F# data library? Yeah. So I'm going to do just a quick sample. We want to write a little news page that will print all the important information. So this is designed specifically for British people. It will print news from the BBC, and then it will show the weather. And the way I can do this is that I can say XML provider, And the first thing I want to do is to read some news from the BBC RSS feed. So what's happening here? The XML type provider, the way it works is that you give it in the angle bracket static parameter, which is a sample feed or sample XML file, or it could be a URL as well. And then I can say RSS.getSample, and this will actually load the data from that sample URL. Now, the nice thing here is that you can just have one sample and then load data dynamically. So we can also say load and give it a string with the runtime URL to use. Here I'm just using the same one, but you could just provide one sample of RSS feed and read arbitrary many other RSS feeds. So once we have this, we can actually have a look at this BBC thing, and this works as nicely in Atom as in Visual Studio. You get auto-completion on the members of the types, on the type, and it figured out that there's a channel top-level property, and if we look at channel, there's all the information from RSS feed, like description, title. Oh, there's no title. No, there's title somewhere. So I could just try saving it with this, and then it prints the title in the command line. So now we've extracted the title. Let's see what we can do more. So what I want to do more is to actually get the news and format it and display this as HTML. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at BBC channel and all the items. And items is actually a collection. So let's do in items, do, and we'll need to get some information about the item. Now, there's things like thumbnails, title, and description. And I already have a snippet. So let me just find my cheat. I'll need function to format news. So I wanted to make this really simple. So I just I will just be composing strings using sprintf. There are various templating engines you can use with Suave, like there's Razor support, or you could plug in anything. But here I just want to do something basic. So let's say for every item in here, what we are going to do is that we'll call format news, and then what do we need to take it? So it takes image. We'll need to get that first. I'll get back to the image. Then it takes link and the text and description. So those we can get from the item. I think I need link, item dot, is it title, and item dot description. And then I'm just going to do string concat and concatenate everything together. All right, now the thumbnail, that's the only difficult thing here, because thumbnails is actually a collection. So if I look at the type of the thumb, it's a list or collection of some objects. And I think what I need to do here is for every thumbnail, we can get some information about the thumbnail. We'll just pick the URL of the largest one, because why not? And then this will have, I think, URL, right? So now I should have a string, and let me just, for debugging purposes, try to print it. So if I rerun it, now something interesting happened here, because I get an error. It failed to reload the script because there's something wrong in my file.
The quoting on line 19?
Oh yeah, this is obviously wrong. I need to do some escaping here. Apparently, Atom didn't nicely insert my snippet. Okay, now it should work. I still get an error saying the input sequence was empty. What would that be? Let me try with this function here. Still empty. Oh, I see. It's failing on when reading the thumbnails because apparently BBC decided to make my talk more complicated, and they added one new item to the news which doesn't have a thumbnail. So then I'll have to actually handle this. Well, let's just say if there's nothing, we'll skip it. Should I do it better? Okay, I'll do it better. But what should I do without thumbnails? No, I'm not going to do it better. I'll add the exception handling here, right? So handle all the errors and just return nothing. Oh well, then I need to return the URL here. Okay, now it printed everything. So I've played with type providers in a very similar way in which you would normally use F-sharp interactively. But now we can nicely plug this into the app object. And I'll start by doing doing this in a fairly silly way. So if I go back to my snippets, then one snippet that I also have is this one, which is just reading an index where I have sort of a template. If I look at my index, it's just HTML and has this hash1 and hash2 placeholders. So in hash1, I want to put my news. In hash2, I want to put my weather. And to do that, I'll just need something like this. So I've changed my app a little bit, and this is now replacing in the HTML, and I just need to say news. So this is my get news function, which does what it used to do, doesn't print, returns a string, and we are going to call get news. And whether, well, that we'll figure out later. Okay, so if I save it now, it reloaded, and here's my news with thumbnails. And apparently, there's the two that are breaking my demo. We can just take first 10. Now, I'm still not doing this perfectly right, because the call in get news, this call to load, that's actually a blocking call. So this will take a long time, and we should probably catch this. But if we want to follow this style, then well, we should do this asynchronously. And this is where we can use the second fact, which is that Suave actually works nicely with async. And so what I'm going to do in get news is that I'm just going to change this to letbang and call async load. And then I also need to return my results. And now I changed get news to be asynchronous, and we need to go back to app and integrate it here as well. And app, previously you didn't quite see this. App is actually a sort of function, and it's something called web part. So in Suave, you're building web parts, and web part is something that's like a function that takes context, which is the HTTP request, and asynchronously returns. And here now we are in an async block. At the end, I'm just going to call return bank inside async, which is like, now actually do this and return whatever this would return. So I'm delegating all the hard work to the OK operation, which means successfully return with code to 200 a web page. And now here I can say let bank get news, and it, did it reload? No, it didn't reload. No, maybe I think it did. Yeah, it works. And now it's doing the same thing, but asynchronously without blocking. So anybody has any questions so far? No? Yes?
So did you, I just heard about Suave like very recently. Did you take a look at Nancy, which is also the other framework, which is very lightweight?
So there's a few other frameworks, like Nancy. I haven't really looked at Nancy myself very much. I know some people in the F# community have been using it. The nice thing with Suave is that it's sort of really designed for F#, and it's super lightweight. I think even with Nancy, you get like a bunch of dependencies. Here, it's pretty much one file, which is tiny. So that's the thing I like about it. But I'll have like a list with a few other things that are out there. So yeah. Yep.
Is it possible to take like the app that you make in this and use it on a normal web server, like IIS or something?
Yes, wait until the end of the talk.
Get ahead of myself.
Yep.
In the beginning, you kind of were ragging on other frameworks as being too complicated. Yet these other frameworks use an MVC paradigm to separate, the view from the controller and the business smarts.
Yeah.
Are you against that, or is it that you have a different way of doing it?
Well, so I made a few rants about frameworks, and I think there's situations where it makes complete sense to use framework if you're building something very large and you want to fit your thing into a well-defined structure. And I'm not really against that. I think that there's definitely very, very valid situations for doing that. I think what I like about this is that you can start simple and find and structure the code in whatever way you want. So if you wanted to structure it as a model view controller, you can, but it's not forcing you. But I'm not necessarily against everyone else. I just want to show you one nice demo or like few nice things using this one, and then I think everyone has to decide what's the right thing to do for a particular problem. Like there's no one solution that fits everything. Yes?
This is kind of a trivial question, but since I haven't played with type providers, so the type inference on, say, the BBC variable, if I were to pass that into a function that was defined above it, would I just have to qualify it or like explicitly say that it's a type RSS in order to get the dot?
If I had it like this defined below. Oops. So
I mean to say, so the type inference.
Oh, right.
Type inference,
Yeah.
I didn't get the dot off.
Yeah. So if I didn't knew this was BBC, if BBC was
yes,
a
it
parameter.
would pass into there.
Yeah. So that's a good question. If BBC was an argument, then in F# in general, when you do dots on things, you need to know what's the type of it.
You just have to qualify as RSS.
And I can qualify it as RSS dot, and then I have to figure out which of the nested classes it is. Here. So RSS generates like a whole bunch of types for the top level type, for the channel item, and so on. Here, and we try to name them nicely, but not always successfully. I think here we have root. No. Probably the easiest option is to check what was the type before.
Yeah.
But I think this wasn't channel because that's what I got from channel. It could be just RSS. Yeah. Okay. So if you see the list of the nested classes here, there's channel, there's image, GUID, item is what we're iterating over. So you can see them all in there, but they're all, because the type provider provides like one thing, everything is underneath of that.
And it's all contained in there.
Yes, it's all contained there. That's actually a really good question. Okay, so now we have asynchronous get news, and because XML is apparently old-fashioned, I'll have to do one more. This one is using JSON type provider to get the better. So this is connecting to a service which gives me weather, and the interesting thing here is you can give it in the URL, like daily question mark q equals. There you can give some city, and I haven't figured out how to get Fahrenheit from it, so it will be in Celsius. If you prefer Kelvins, I can also do Kelvins. And we'll get weather forecast for 10 days. And again, I'm going to follow the same pattern. So getWeather is an asynchronous function that gets weather using the weather type. And we have async load, and I want to async load, but here I'm going to use, just as a sample, a different URL. So I'll replace London with New York. I'm going to hope that it will pick the one in the US. Sometimes there's crazy things, like London in Canada. So now we have weather, and then what do we have on weather? Again, I can like nicely use the REST-based API, even without actually knowing what's in there. So there's a list. So we probably want to iterate over all the things in the list. And what do we have in the list? Well, let's see what we have in item. We have clouds, we have rain, we have temperature. So I'm going to, again, cheat a little bit and just use my string concat, use a predefined function here, which is news, weather, format weather. This is what I want. And I'll have to fix the encoding, I guess. So this takes a heading, which will be my day. It takes another bit where it puts like icon, because they can give you icon as well. And then it takes temperature during the day, temperature during the night. So this is all the information we need to get from here. And I'll need one more thing, because the way the service works is that they return dates as Unix timestamps. So I have just a helper function here to get the date. So if we say time is item, and there's, I think it's DT property, that's the time. So we convert it to date time, and then we do toString with some nice formatting. And then I should just be able to say format weather with my new time. And then what else do I need? Icon, temperature during the day, temperature during the night. Is there icon? I think the icon is hidden somewhere. Oh, it's under weather. Like there's like a list of icons. Weather. Let me get the first one. Last time I tried, there was a first one. So if we do that, then here's my icon. And then on item, we have temp, where there's temperature during the day and temperature during the night. So again, I'm using this nice thing with which you get with Azure type providers, which is that I can pretty much write the code without even looking at the documentation for the service, because it just infers the type for me, and then I can do my dot-driven development and find all the things I need from the data set. So let's see if I can put in the weather. and replace the better, save it, reload it, and here's my better. So it looks like it's going to be, Tuesday, that's today. Tomorrow, it's all warm, just like today. I'll translate from Celsius for you. It's kind of the same as today. So we have our news website. And actually, I'll maybe get back to this later. Yes, I'll get back to it later. And I'm going to say a few more things with my slides. So I guess and I'm not really saying you should use this Suave thing with my build script for everything. I guess what I wanted to demonstrate here is that when you're building something fairly lightweight, and then this gives you a really nice way to quickly develop it, have your server written just in one script file with minimal number of dependencies. It works great with asynchronous programming when you're getting some data. It works beautifully with type providers, again, when you want to call some other services and so on. And you can wrap it with the nice F# build and packaging infrastructure. But equally, there's just a function start web server, which takes this app object, and that's all you really need. So if you want to have this running in any other way, like as a console app or service, you just need to call a function. Yep.
Can you return like a JSON object back instead of an HTML doc?
Yeah, can we return JSON object back? Yeah, you can. You'll just need to figure out how to nicely format your JSON. So when I wrote one web server with this that has like a REST-based API and returns JSONs, and I just used the library in F# data to build them. But you can integrate this with JSON.NET because that's like a fairly nice way to actually produce JSON. Or you could use, I think, fsPickler has a way of producing JSONs. So again, like it doesn't force you to use one particular technology. You can use whatever works. Yep.
You haven't used the request part, like you physically have a function that's from unit to response. Like how does the request show up in?
Yes, that's an excellent question. Which I'll show in the next demo. Yeah, I have like one more slide and then the next demo. So I'm not going to answer your question immediately, but maybe in 5 minutes. Yep.
Is there a better alternative to like essentially outputting strings for the structure?
Is there a better alternative than outputting strings? Yes. So Suave in the sort of repo, they have integration with Razor, where you write sort of C#-like thing in your HTML to do iterations. That's like they have a DLL for that you can just use. But you can. There's a few other frameworks or libraries. I haven't really looked at one, but there's one called .liquid, which gives you like very simple, lightweight templating. So that's another one if you just want like simple iteration over things in an HTML template. I'm sure you could integrate this with other like HTML libraries for F#. I'm sure the WebSharper people have something which you could probably plug in here as well. Phil has a little demo showing how you can write a little HTML DSL. So there's again a bunch of options. I think Razor is the one that's sort of easier to use, but yeah, then you have to write a little bit of C# in your HTML, which is actually not that bad. All right. So I talked about Bucket as well. I'm just using it to get my dependencies, but again, you could work with NuGet. So I said how it has these two different files, and I didn't say very much about the fake build script. So this is actually the code that's running behind the scenes. There's a little function that, well, there's a reload script function, which I'm not showing here, but that's using the F# compiler service, where you can start F# interactive and tell it, load this file, give me this value, and then fake is just has a nice mutable variable, current app, and whenever my file changes, so fake has like a watcher for monitoring file system changes. Whenever file system changes, it will reload the current app, and then the server is always hosting the current value there. So that's another interesting bit of architecture there. The other demo where we're actually going to do more interesting things is to write the chat application. So I'm going to stop my news service and go to chat and do build. And I'm going to close this and instead go to my chat. Shut this down. Let's see what happens. Okay, here's my chat. And if I go to fsx, there's the template again. And let me just check that I have all the packages. Okay, looks like I have all my packages. So the idea here is we'll have to fill in all the implementation. There's like a text box where I can enter my name and my message, and then it should hopefully appear there. But currently it's not doing very much. So as a starting point, the stuff I have here is kind of very similar to what we had in the last one. I have two asynchronous functions or web parts that are get messages, and this just returns some HTML. And then I have post message, which just says accepted. And this is where we'll need to actually do something. The other interesting bit here is that I have, well, I'm reading my chat template, but this is where there's something interesting. So what this is saying, and Suave has a couple of building operations for dealing with web parts. And so far, I only used OK, which says return this. But you can use this operator, which actually, if you look at the type, isn't monolith bind, but it's just the operator they like for composition. Yeah, it's just compose web parts. What it does is that you can have. Previously, I had a script that's, or previously I had server that was always saying, okay, here's your HTML, ignore the request. Now, if I say something different here, then it says not found. And why is that the case? Because I have this path slash. So path slash is a web part that says, check that the URL is slash, if not, fail. If yes, then okay, continue. So I have this one which may fail, and then I'm using another built-in one that just says set the line type, and then okay, return index. So this is checking on the URL. So that's at least something here. We're actually going to need more. So I'm going to cheat a little bit again. And I have a template for chat. And what do I need? I need my routing. So what we're going to do here is more complicated. There's also, aside from having the path combinator, which I was using, there's also this choose combinator. And what choose does, it's like pattern matching in F#, basically. It says, well, go through this list and pick the first one that worked. So now we are saying, try this path, and otherwise just say error message. But we can add more things, and what I want to do here is to actually add routing for the get message and post message. And I needed my template because the comments are saying what I actually need to handle. So what I want to do is and this is going to be using a little REST API. So there's some JavaScript in here, which I could show you, but it's very ugly. There's just JavaScript that says when the text change, well, repeatedly call get on chat, and when we have something called post as a post request. So we want to handle chat. We want to handle this with the if it's get. So again, I can use built-in thing that checks if my request is get, and then I'll need one more thing because here this is going to be changing all the time. So I need to say disable, set like all the different headers that disable caching. So this is just composing a bunch of set header calls to build a web part that will disable all caching, and then when I'm done, I need to say get message, and this actually takes a chat room as an argument, chat room name, because I want to support multiple chat rooms. So I'll just say default, and I think this is get messages, yes. So similar one will be to handle post using the post request with no caching, and we want to post message to the chat room. So this is really nice way to specify routing and compose the various headers and all that sort of stuff. Now the next thing we need, okay, I think if I save it, we should at least start seeing system says nothing. If I did everything correctly, maybe I didn't do everything correctly. We're calling get messages. This is my app. Chat is get. Let's see if this is doing something. Yeah, it's doing something. It's just not routing correctly. Get messages, post messages. This is all running. Is this actually running? I can switch to a completed version of this. You know what I'm going to do? I'll open this in Chrome. No, I'm apparently doing something wrong. So what's going wrong? Chat not found. Okay, well, I have my URL wrong. This is a bug in my JavaScript. I'm not responsible. I'm going to just, yeah, because I thought I'll be clever, but it doesn't work. So I think if I do this, then it should work. Oh, now it's there. So, yeah, my JavaScript is wrong, and I could fix the JavaScript, but I just instead cheated in my routing. All right, so we've got something here. Now, what we want to do, so this bit of code here is running, except not generating the right HTML. And I also need to get all the information from my request. So this is where, because I'm inside this web part, I can have a look at the context. And now this is actually, I could say something like return web part, which is function taking context. It's just, what I'm doing here is just adding the type annotation so that I get completion on context. And you can see things like request, so you can have a look at what's in there. There's like form data, header, method, all the things that come with a request. So what I'm going to do is parse the request, and I have a cheat for that. So here, what we are doing is that we'll look at query params and pick the name from there, because that's where JavaScript gives me the name. And then I'm going to read the body of the request and just get the text from it, and that's my text. So now we have almost everything on the server part, and we just need some way of actually storing the messages or remembering the messages. And this is where I wanted to write a little agent. So the first thing I'll need, how many people have played with agents or mailbox processors? Yeah, that's more than F# data. Nice. So what kind of messages can my agent handle? I'll need two messages. One for sending stuff to the agent, so new message, which is going to have two strings in there with the name and the text. And then I'll need, what I'll need? Get, and this is going to be, so here I need async reply channel, which is basically a way of sending stuff back from the agent. So that's my message type, and now I just need to write an agent. So that's mailbox processor start. We are starting an agent, and inside the agent, I'll remember the state, which will be some sort of list of all the messages. So I'm going to do this, and here inside agent, you can use like local mutable state as well. But I thought I'll be functional and write it as a recursive loop. So I have recursive loop that keeps array or collection of messages. And what do we do here? We receive a message. Oh, now I'm being confusing. So this is the messages in the room, like whatever people post there. And this is the message, the chat message that we are getting. I don't have any better name for this, so I'll just leave it like this. So now we receive the message, and we need to look what it is that the agent should do. And there's two things we might want to do. One is if we have new name and text, and in this case, I'm going to format this. So what we want to do is to just say li strong with the name, end of strong, the text, end of li, name and text. And then we continue looping with this new messages appended to my existing messages. And if we get the get request, then we need to reply with all the messages. So what I'm going to do is to say REPL dot, and there's reply, and I'm just going to reply with one string. So we are concatenating all the messages that we've accumulated. I'm not cleaning the messages. I should probably do that, but I guess for the purpose of the demo, I'll just keep appending messages until my memory runs out. Yep.
Are you using Haskell cons there?
Am I using Haskell cons? Yes, thank you. Now people think I'm clever because I know Haskell. While it's just my keyboard is corrected. All right. So we've got, let's see if it works. Well, it can't work because I haven't connected it to the other part. But that should be pretty easy. So here we just need to get all the body. And the nice thing is that we can now do this asynchronously. So the agent might be busy processing some messages, but we can actually use this asynchronous way to send it the get command, and this will create a channel, and then it will wait until the agent sends the reply there, and I need to call this with bank. So this is one place where, again, we can nicely use async. And here, I want to just send a notification to the agent to add name and text. And did I call it add? I did call it new. Now, my text disappeared. So if I go back and say Thomas says hello, then it's there. Well, that's not too surprising. Let's close it and reopen it. It's actually there. So it seems to be doing something. Now, I have two possible options what to do. I'm sure people want to chat. So let's try deploying this somewhere so that you can contribute as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to use GitHub. And I'm going to create a new repository here called nyc-fsharp.nyc. Available for sale for just 8 million. I need empty repository. That's it. And I already have a repository here, so I haven't learned how to use any nice tools for Git. So I'll have to do this from command line. Let's go to chat. And I changed my app. And I'm going to... No, banks don't work. We have chat. And then I'll just have to copy all these things. So I want to put it in my repo. That's it. I'll actually have to do one more thing if I want to show you all the possible powers of this. And I'll explain it when it's deploying. But let me just go here, because here it needs the place where I put it. Let's press here. I could fill the other information there, but I'm too lazy. Okay, and now I'll have to push all my stuff to GitHub. And it's here. And I'll say a few things about all the files that are there, but there's a nice README with 2 buttons. So depending on who's your favorite platform provider. Okay, well I'll have to do this from I think here, because here I'm logged in. Oh. So you can deploy this to Azure, and this is using Azure websites. There's a nice blog post from Scott Henselman, who helped us get this to work after I tweeted that I'm running this on Heroku and it works nicely. And let's call it fschat nyc. fschat nyc. Request. Okay, well, I guess. No, I should be able to put dashes there. I think. Create new. We can pick where we want to host it. I guess this works. No, I think it doesn't like my name. Oh, no, it does. It was just checking. All right. Yes, deploy. And in the meantime, I'll have to log in here and try the other one. I'm basically doing 2 deployments at the same time because I'm hoping that at least one of them will work. United States. All right. Now, so the way this works is that there's a bunch of additional files that are required, some for Azure and the other bits for Heroku. For Azure, or I guess the easiest story is on Heroku, where the way Heroku deployment works is that it will just create a new Linux VM, install Mono on the Linux, copy your files there, and then it starts a specified file. And here we have to specify a build pack, which is something that Heroku uses to install everything we need on the VM. So that installs Mono, which comes with F#. And then it runs, then it looks at my proc file, where I'm just saying start F# interactive, this is some flag, and run whatever is in up Heroku FSX. And this is really just a proxy that hash loads up and then loads the port that Heroku wants us to listen on. So Heroku will tell you, listen on this port, and we start the web server on this port and bind to 000, which is basically following Heroku documentation. And here's my Heroku deployment. Now, in Azure, the way this works is that we want to host our own server, basically. So, and Azure, and you can really easily like put it on a VM and run it. On Azure Websites is running some sort of IIS. So in webconfig, you can specify this thing called HTTP platform handler, which is what Azure Websites used to host things like Java and Python as well. And here it's just saying when there's request, just forward it to this application. And so again, we start this time at Azure FSX, and we give it HTTP platform port. And we just run it using fake. So we just run, again, F# interactive, load this thing, which is, it's just listening on a specified port. The reason why I have two separate files is that they just give me the port in different ways. And I didn't want to write one messy file. Cool, and now you can actually go to fschat-nyc.azurewebsites.net, and I'll see if this works. This is on Windows. Or did it do anything? It didn't do anything. And this is on Heroku. Okay, I did break something here, I guess. No, nobody here.
I sent something to the Azure.
Yeah, I did something wrong somewhere, but at least you can go to fschat nyc Heroku app and chat over there. I'll make it a bit bigger. I'm kind of curious what went wrong on the other one. Hey, there's people.
I didn't get it.
Oh, it's the same one again? Yeah. I probably didn't fix something, but I got at least one to work, which is nice. That was the point.
Seems like Azure needs a lot of configuration in comparison.
Yeah, I didn't say that. That's why we have Scott Hanselman to help us. So, what was interesting here, I think there's one really interesting thing, which is the nice routing API. So the fact that you can say things like this to specify your different routes it makes it really easy to write REST-based API where you need to look for get and post and different paths and so on. One thing I didn't get to show you, which is also available, and I'll need to find this somewhere else. So I'll just open this as a sample. I'm not going to run it. This is doing pretty much the same thing, but it has this additional handling where, aside from path, you can also use path scan, and this will take a string with F# formatting strings. So you can do things like %s for strings, %d for numbers, and then it actually uses the type inference on format strings and takes a function where it gives you all the values. So you get basically type safe routing with numbers and strings and floats. So here, room, because this is %s, is of type string. And yeah, you can go back to the sample, and I wrote a version that has support for multiple rooms, but I think I'll leave that as an additional sample that you can play with. So let me just see if anybody, nice. I'm surprised nobody figured out that this doesn't encode HTML yet. That usually happens more quickly. So the routing is nice. The other thing I didn't get to show is unit testing and FS check. So you can actually unit test this really nicely because fundamentally it's just a function that takes input and produces output. So I wrote a little test which says if I request this, then it should return HTTP with code 200, and I'm just creating a request that I call my function, evaluate it on the request, and then I check what it returns. So if you want to test your web server, this is really nice way to do it, and you're testing the full thing. Like we can really test that the app, which is our server, returns what it was supposed to return. And in the repo, you can have a look. I think the next talk here is probably going to be about FS check, but I wrote a little random test for it as well, where what I'm basically doing is that I say, no matter what text you send to the chat, if I send some messages into it and then get the contents of the chat, it should be there. So you can write automated tests that generate random inputs and check properties, like if I send something, it will actually be there. And that works really nicely with this library. And I have just one bonus demo that I wanted to show. I'm not going to go through the code for this one. I think there's still some pizza left. 6 pounds worth. That's a lot. Oh my god. We'll have to switch to the pizza soon. So this is a little project I wrote with Phil Relford. And Phil Relford often speaks at conferences and tries to tell people how easy it is to get started with F#. And people say, well, F# is too difficult and hard for me. So one day, Phil brought his 8-year-old son to a little F# hackathon we were having, and I spent some time with his son and taught him a little bit about F#. And it was using a library I had in Visual Studio for composing 3D graphics, and we thought, well, it would be nice if this was easily accessible in the web browser. And so we wrote this thing using, actually this is using the F# web integration that people at Bayard Rock, who were hosting the user group, wrote. So we shamelessly stole all the JavaScript from them. And I didn't touch the JavaScript, but I rewrote the server side in using Suave. So what this is doing, and I haven't checked the website in a while, so let's see if it still runs. Maybe, maybe not. Ah, there it is.
Is it WebGL?
Yes, it's using WebGL under the cover. So here I get nice F-sharp editor, and you can write any F-sharp there, but it will only run things that are basically expressions that return this 3D objects. And I can say things like, take the cube, and then I have various transformations on them. So what do we have? I think we have color, which is a function, takes a color, can give it color. The nice thing is that the tooltips are HTML as well, so I can put color in there, create orange cube, that's it. I can move it. So the idea here is that you're basically building an expression, and everything starts in the center of the world. And if you want it somewhere else, you have to move it. On this, let's move it in this direction. Oops, that was too far. Maybe just by 2. Where's my cube? There. Oh yeah, the whole screen is rotating to make it more exciting. And then I can compose it with other things. So there's one custom operator. I can put sphere in the center, and now I have a sphere with a cube rotating around it. I could spend a lot of time with this, but we have a couple of predefined samples. So feel free to go to fun3d.net if you have children around 8 or younger. I'm sure younger can do it as well. Probably not 0, but anything more than 0. So we have tower. It's a little DSL where you can build more complicated things from simple things. So this one is particularly cool because at the end you see these 4 lines. It says tower, 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 wall, 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 wall. So if you define a couple of helpers, then you can really build towers with castles with just 4 lines. And because this is running in JavaScript, in WebGL, where you can do a lot of things, we thought, well, why not? Let's do this. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to load. Maybe if I rerun it again. Hello. Yeah. Let's try again. This was like craziest thing you can do in a browser.
Can you add some Game of Thrones music?
I don't know. I don't know how to do music in Game of Thrones.
That's cool.
So this is. Oh wait. This is all. There's a Suave server behind this, which is actually very similar to the chat room we wrote and things like that. And it has something like 300 lines of code, and it's calling the F-sharp compiler service. Okay, I think the video is a bit distracting. I'll turn it off. But you can go there and have a look. I could show you, it's all on GitHub. I don't want to spend too much time on this because there's still bits awaiting. But it's basically, so there's, most of the code is stolen from Bayard Rock. So this is the dealing with the F-sharp compiler service, all of this, where we do things like get method, get declarations. That's what you do, what you get when you dot, and then it will type check the file and get declarations on a specific point in the file, and all those are written as async functions. And right at the end, there's some more code that does the evaluation. So when you hit run, what it does is that it sends the F-sharp code to the server. It invokes funscript, which is F-sharp library for translating F-sharp to JavaScript. It translates this to JavaScript, sends the JavaScript back, and runs it. So if you try to do something dangerous, it will run on your machine as JavaScript. And then at the end, there's pretty much the same kind of stuff. Here I wrote it using pattern matching. So we pattern match on the kind of requests and do something depending on what the user wants.
FunScript translate itself so this can fully run in the browser?
Can FunScript translate itself? No, it can't. Well, it's real. So FunScript basically takes an F# quotation, which is something that the F# compiler produces. And so we would need to translate the whole F# compiler, which surprisingly hasn't happened yet. It would be obviously, that's what we need, the full F# to JavaScript compiler. And then there's one other library which is translated from F# to JavaScript, and that's the fun part. So this is where it's basically doing all the WebGL stuff to like move camera around, and then there's all the functions like colors, the functions to create the different shapes, where we're using something called 3, which is another JavaScript library on top of WebGL that lets you say like create a cylinder and stuff. And this is another 300 lines of code. So the whole fun 3D thing is 600 lines of code. And I think it shows that you can do pretty complicated things with 2 files. This one was using quite a few other things. So it was using the F# compiler service to actually evaluate the code, translate it, parse it, and everything. And it was using FunScript for the JavaScript generation. But again, like you can see that the general scheme here is I just have my app.fsx and I can reference other packages. So you have access to lots of other libraries. If you wanted to generate Markdown, for example, like write my HTML in Markdown, you could just do it here by using something like F# formatting, which gives you nice ways for parsing Markdown and processing it. So there's a lot of options. And to summarize, I already mentioned this in the discussion earlier. Like, there's a lot of other interesting things happening in the F# and web space, and I think Suave is nice for lightweight building of services, little applications that are composed from other libraries, and you can easily deploy it to Heroku and to Azure. There's other projects like Freya, which is more sort of sophisticated, in some ways even more functional and very composable. And that is based on Open, which you can probably host. You can host it on IIS and in many other ways. I think it's very similar to Suave. It's sort of has more functional constructs on top of it. I guess it's more inspired by Haskell in some ways. There's WebSharper, which is very sophisticated framework that lets you mix server-side F# code and client-side what runs as JavaScript, also written in F#, and it translates the F# to JavaScript. And the company behind it, they actually recently released it as open source as well. So it's open source, but they also do like commercial support. So that's again, like you have to learn the framework, but then it gives you lots of power. And there's also other standard .NET things like ASP.NET, MVC, NANC, Service Stack, and all of those can in some way be used with F#. And I guess you get more when you use them, when you already know how to use them, or when you have something else using the infrastructure. So there's a lot of options, and I just demonstrated one of the lots of options available here. So you can go to functional-programming.net, which is a beautiful domain I got, and has advertisements for my books and trainings and everything. If you want to learn more, or if you want to get some consulting or trainings from F# Works. And I think that's all I wanted to say. So thanks for coming.